Taurus is often described as someone who values stability. Not loud, not driven by flashy ambition. Just someone who likes to know where they stand, how much is in the account, and what tomorrow is likely to look like. A steady job, savings that grow a little each month, a routine that does not shift too abruptly. Even hearing that can make the heart feel calm. I once sat down for coffee with a friend of mine who is a Taurus. He talked about his work in a steady, even tone. No complaints, no dramatic excitement. Everything was fine. That word came up often. Fine with the salary, fine with the environment, fine with the near future. And honestly, it did sound reassuring. But at some point, I found myself wondering, does fine always mean moving forward? Or can it sometimes feel like a velvet chair, so comfortable that you forget what it feels like to stand up? Taurus is rarely in a rush. There is something beautiful about that. Like a farmer patiently tending his land, trusting that if he waters it consistently, the harvest will come in its own time. Yet in today's financial world, the land can shift faster than we expect. Markets are not always level ground. Opportunities can appear and quietly fade, like the last light of late afternoon. There was a time my friend was invited to join a small project outside his main job. Nothing dramatic, just a new direction, something slightly unfamiliar. He shook his head. "I'm not sure I need more risk. Things are good as they are." That statement was not wrong, not at all. But I noticed something in his voice. It sounded like someone standing in front of a door that was slightly open, choosing to remain inside a familiar room because the light outside looked different. Safety itself is not the problem. We all need a foundation to walk on. But sometimes, when that foundation is held onto for too long, it can turn into a polished floor, solid, beautiful, yet slick enough to make us hesitate before taking a step, afraid of disturbing the balance we have worked so hard to maintain. Taurus tends to build wealth through persistence. They are not fans of dramatic leaps. That makes them reliable, responsible with money. Still, if every decision is measured against one quiet question, will this take away my sense of stability? Then the space for experimentation can slowly shrink. I do not see Taurus as lacking ability or vision. If anything, they often think far ahead. They simply want the road to feel solid before placing their foot on it, like testing the strength of a bridge several times before crossing. That caution has value, yet standing too long at the edge of the bridge can mean never discovering what lies on the other side. Security, when used well, can be a foundation, but when held like a shield, it can become a soft boundary. Not painful, not obvious, just enough to keep someone in the same place longer than they realize. Maybe the most interesting shift is not about changing everything. Maybe it is about standing up from that comfortable chair once in a while, walking a few steps around the room, opening a window, not to leave immediately, just to notice what the air outside feels like. And perhaps, in that quiet moment, Taurus might realize that their steadiness does not disappear when they try something new. It may simply be waiting to be used in a more flexible way, like a strong tree that can grow another branch, instead of remaining rooted in the same familiar garden forever. There are gardens that look peaceful from the outside. The grass is neatly trimmed, the stone paths are clean, the fence is freshly painted each year. The person standing inside feels in control of everything. They know every tree, every shaded corner. Nothing feels surprising, and yet, if that garden is never expanded, it can slowly begin to feel smaller, without the owner even noticing. The trees are still green, the flowers still bloom, but somehow, the sky above seems a little lower than before. Taurus stubbornness is rarely loud. It is not dramatic resistance. Then it feels more like quietly keeping things the same because the rhythm is familiar, like wearing a well-fitted shirt that is slightly worn at the cuffs, but still more comfortable than anything new in the closet. I once heard a Taurus talk about investing. He had chosen one path years ago and hardly changed it. Not because it was perfect, just because he understood it. He was used to it. Whenever someone mentioned a new trend or a new technology, he would shrug lightly. "I'm not sure it will last." There was caution in his voice, but there was also something smaller, not fear of losing money, more like a hesitation around uncertainty, a reluctance to start learning from the beginning, a quiet discomfort at no longer being the one who fully understands the game. Maybe what makes Taurus hesitate is not changing who they are. It is changing the familiar structure of the world around them. They like the feeling of walking on ground that has already been packed firm. If the surface trembles, even slightly, they pause and wait for it to settle before moving again. But the financial world is not a straight concrete road. It is closer to the ocean, sometimes calm, sometimes carrying small waves beneath the surface. The person who insists on anchoring the boat in one fixed spot may feel safe, but might also miss the current quietly carrying others farther out. What makes this interesting is that Taurus does not lack endurance. If they choose a new direction, they often commit deeply. The challenge is that the first step can remain suspended in thought for too long. New ideas sit quietly in a notebook. New opportunities are considered so carefully that they slowly cool down. Consistency is like a solid stone, but when that stone is placed in front of a doorway, it can unintentionally become an obstacle, not because it is flawed, but because it is heavy and difficult to move once it is settled in place. Sometimes what is needed is not tearing down the entire garden, just cutting a small opening in the fence, planting one new row of seeds outside the original boundary. It does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to happen all at once, just enough to sense that the world might be wider than what feels familiar. And perhaps, in the moment Taurus allows an unfamiliar breeze to pass through, they begin to notice something subtle. Stability does not disappear when things shift. It may simply reveal itself in a new form, not in keeping everything unchanged, but in standing steady even as the landscape quietly begins to evolve around them. There is a kind of steadiness that is not about keeping everything exactly the same. It is about trusting that you can adapt without losing who you are. Taurus often carries that earthy quality inside them, solid, grounded, enduring, but soil that only holds water for itself without allowing roots to grow deeper cannot help a tree truly rise. Taurus appreciates beauty. They appreciate the feeling of enough, a good chair, a satisfying meal, a living space that feels warm and intentional. There is refinement in the way they choose. They do not spend carelessly. They choose what feels worthy, a softer mattress, clothes made from better fabric, a kitchen thoughtfully upgraded. Those choices create a quiet sense of living well, of treating oneself with care. And yet sometimes that care leans heavily toward the present moment. I once saw a Taurus invest quite a bit into making his home beautiful. It became inviting, tasteful, a place where anyone would want to linger. But when the conversation shifted to learning a new skill or setting aside money for a long-term opportunity, he hesitated. "I'll think about it later. It's not urgent right now." There is something deeply human in that response. Who does not want to enjoy what they have worked for? After steady hours of effort, giving yourself a little comfort can feel like a quiet thank you. Still, if most of your resources flow toward what soothes you immediately, the seeds meant for the future may sit forgotten in a corner of the garden. No one sees them drying out. No one hears them calling. Everything remains fine. It just does not grow much beyond that. It is like tending the decorative pot more than the roots. The pot is polished, placed in the best light, admired daily. But the roots beneath the soil need time. They need nourishment. They need seasons where nothing visible seems to happen. Enjoyment is not wrong. At times, it is the fuel that keeps you moving. Yet when all energy goes toward calming the present, long-term accumulation can slow in subtle ways. Not because there is not enough money, but because there is not enough priority given to what does not reward you instantly. Taurus has taste. They understand quality. Perhaps the interesting shift is allowing that same sense of quality to guide future investments. Choosing a course the way you would choose a well-built chair. Choosing an investment the way you would choose something durable and lasting. Not because it is flashy, but because its structure feels sound. When comfort and growth no longer stand on opposite ends, but begin to move together, the feeling of abundance takes on a different depth. It becomes more than warmth in today's room. It becomes a quiet awareness that something is being planted for seasons yet to come. And maybe what truly strengthens Taurus is not preserving everything exactly as it is, but learning to balance enjoyment with cultivation. Between the beautiful pot in plain sight and the roots quietly searching deeper into the earth below, perhaps that balance does not arrive in some dramatic turning point. It grows out of very small, very private moments of reflection, like sitting alone at night, opening a spreadsheet, and seeing the same familiar numbers. Everything is under control, no shortage, no crisis, but nothing truly breaking through either. Taurus often says they are simply being careful, and in many ways that is true. They do not rush into things on a wave of emotion. They want the data, they want the analysis, they want to consider every possible outcome. That kind of caution makes others feel safe working with them. And yet, somewhere between careful and delayed, there is a thin line, so thin that sometimes it is only a slightly slower step than usual. I once watched a Taurus consider enrolling in a professional development course. The tuition was reasonable, the schedule was manageable. He researched thoroughly, read reviews, compared programs. Each time we spoke, he found one more reason to wait a little longer. Eventually, registration closed. Nothing dramatic happened, no disaster. The opportunity simply passed, like a message left unread. Fear of risk does not always look like panic. Sometimes it wears the jacket labeled prudence. It looks reasonable, mature, responsible. There are financial decisions that remain suspended for too long. Plans to invest more, to expand, to experiment. They stay on the list marked later. After there is more certainty, after the market feels clearer, after the uneasy feeling fades. That moment can feel like a train passing through a station. No loud announcement, no warning, it quietly moves on. The person standing on the platform may not even realize what was missed. Everything still looks normal. The station remains. The sky is still blue. Only the train is gone. This kind of friction is subtle. It does not crash your account. It does not create shockwaves. It simply slows the rhythm of growth, like walking a long road and stopping again and again to retie your shoes, even though the laces were never loose. What may hold Taurus back is not a lack of confidence. It may be the desire to preserve control. Even a small risk carries a blur around the edges, and that blur can feel uncomfortable to someone who values clarity. Yet, financial maturity might not come from eliminating risk entirely. It may come from learning to live with a manageable level of uncertainty. Like practicing in shallow water before swimming farther out. No need to dive into large waves, just gradually getting used to the feeling of water lifting your body. I do not see a need for Taurus to change who they are. Their caution is an asset. Still, there may be room for a quiet question. What am I truly waiting for? A perfect sign, a moment without hesitation, or simply one small step that breaks the stillness. The first step does not have to be dramatic. A modest experimental investment, a new skill learned over the weekend, a conversation with someone who sees the world differently. None of these shake the foundation, but they can widen it. And in the moment, Taurus allows themselves to move just slightly beyond certainty. They may notice something subtle. Their steadiness has not disappeared. It is simply learning how to move, no longer standing still in a familiar garden, but walking slowly along a new path, carrying both the beautiful pot in plain sight and the roots quietly reaching deeper into the soil. Perhaps that is what a fuller picture of maturity looks like. Not throwing away what you have built, but also not locking yourself inside a circle of safety that has grown too small. Taurus is good at laying foundations. They are not drawn to things that feel vague or abstract. They prefer what they can see, touch, measure. Money, for them, is not just numbers on a screen. It carries the weight of effort, of long days, of patient, steady steps forward. Because of that, they often want to control every financial decision themselves. They track spending carefully. They remember the small and large amounts alike. They think long before committing money to anything. They rarely hand financial authority to someone else. Deep down, delegating can feel like accepting a piece of uncertainty. That speaks to responsibility. And responsibility is not a flaw. Still, there are moments when holding everything too tightly makes growth harder, like clenching your fist so firmly that circulation slows. I once knew a Taurus who was exceptional at saving. He had detailed plans mapped out year by year, quarter by quarter. Everything was visible, everything accounted for. He did not spend impulsively. He did not chase trends. His stability earned quiet respect. Then one day, a friend invited him to invest in a small venture. Nothing extreme, just a modest experiment with manageable risk. He listened, thought about it for weeks. In the end, he shook his head. I don't want to depend on someone else's decisions. It was honest. He did not want his hard-earned money tied to choices he could not fully control. From one angle, that was self-protection. And yet, in the financial world, some opportunities emerge through collaboration. When two people share ideas, share resources, share risk. Not every partnership leads somewhere meaningful, but sometimes that intersection reveals paths that one person alone might never notice. When everything must remain inside familiar arms, expansion can slow slightly, not because there is not enough capital, not because there is not enough skill, but because those arms have never stretched wider. Taurus values self-reliance. They like knowing exactly what each dollar is doing, but autonomy does not always require isolation. That keeping the final say does not mean carrying the entire load alone. There are streams of income that do not come from tightening the budget further, but from stepping into a new network, a conversation, a partnership, a measured act of trust, not blindly, not by abandoning principles, just softening a little where things have felt rigid, like opening your hand to receive water instead of trying to hold every drop. When the hand opens, water may pass through, but it may also bring more with it. Perhaps what strengthens Taurus is not how firmly they can hold on, but how wisely they know when to hold and when to share. And in that moment, financial flow stops being something that must be controlled at all times. It becomes part of a wider ecosystem, where the beautiful pot, the deep roots, and the extended hands begin to move together in a quieter, steadier rhythm. Maybe that is when things stop feeling like opposites. Safety is no longer a wall, but the ground beneath your feet. Caution is no longer a brake, but a compass. And enjoyment is no longer the destination, but a pause along a longer road. In the end, this is not a story about mistakes. It is about habits formed from a need for safety that over time become small points of resistance. So small they are hard to see. They do not trip us. They simply shorten the stride a little, slow the rhythm just slightly. Taurus has a remarkable capacity for steady accumulation. They are not drawn to shortcuts. They believe in laying one brick at a time. And yet, sometimes all it takes is opening a window, allowing new light into a familiar room. There is no need to tear everything down, no need to change who you are. Maybe it is just moving the chair to a different corner, opening a door once labeled not necessary, asking yourself quietly, what am I protecting? And what might be waiting just beyond that protection? Not to take reckless risks, not to chase noise, only to notice that true steadiness can travel with you rather than keeping you rooted in one spot. Financial growth may not come from a dramatic leap. It may grow from subtle adjustments, a decision made a little sooner, trust widened a little more, a willingness to try something unfamiliar. These shifts do not shake the world, but they can gently shift the way you see yourself. And perhaps on a quiet evening, sitting again with those familiar numbers, Taurus might realize something soft and unexpected. They are not only keeping their money safe, they are allowing it to mature alongside them. Looking back on your own path, have you ever sensed a moment when opening your heart just slightly might have led somewhere quietly meaningful? The answer does not have to be clear tonight. Maybe all that is needed is a pause deep enough to hear the soil beneath your feet, and to feel whether those roots are ready to stretch toward one more branch.